We help investors achieve financial independence through education as well as investment opportunities. You know, when I started, I didn't have the knowledge that I have now, and working with Interview Valet and Tom and the vision really has helped me kind of solidify a lot of this stuff. But when we started out, we said, hey, we just want to help people that want to achieve financial independence and help people either make more money, keep more money through things like tax and insurance and legal strategies, and then ultimately grow your money. So what I found was that over time, I was working with investors. That was our primary business. So we do real estate syndication. So we help people invest in multifamily deals, apartments, self-storage. We even do car washes now, as well as some other things like hotels and mobile home parks. But I would get calls, and a lot of times they were younger people, and they'd say, well, Chris, I'm really interested in investing, but I don't have enough money to do it. Either I don't have enough money to qualify, or I just don't have the money yet. How did you do it? How can I get there? So I bought my first property when I was 21. And it's hard to say, hey, just wait 17 years, go buy a property and wait 17 years like I did. You don't have to do that. So the podcast was really started to curate the information and the knowledge that not only I put together, but the people that I spoke to, the experts, and other people that were out there, curate that information so I could give people a roadmap, give people the shortcuts so that they could do it. And now we even have a course. So we have a course called 6 Figures of Passive Income Roadmap, and that helps walk you step by step through our exact framework. And we even have a nice, beautiful spreadsheet now. So you can just plug your numbers in, and it'll tell you this is when you should be financially independent based upon the plan that you put in place. Yeah, I'm sorry. So we started our own podcast, and then I took part in, this was during COVID. So, they're talking to somebody that's been in sales for basically my entire life since I was 12 years old. So this is going back over 3 decades. And I missed that human interaction. So somehow I got involved in this podcast, like networking session online, and somebody said, oh, you can guest on the podcast. I started working with another group initially, Tiffany, and then fortunately I got connected with Interview Valet. And what I found was, sharing my story helped grow my audience. And I came out with a book, which I got a copy of it right here. And I remember that first call with Tom, and he's like, oh, you're the perfect type of person we can help share your story. Because that's right, what's behind Interview Valet is, people deserve to hear your story. And, I don't think I've ever really made money off my book, certainly not with the time I put in. I give away a lot of copies of it. It's a big part of what we do is trying to give the education away. So it was really trying to maximize the impact that I could have and reach different audiences. And an example of that is we have now a special resource. And actually through this, I was featured in a children's book, a parenting book called No Problem Parenting. I wrote a kids chapter or a chapter on teaching your children about finances, how to teach them how to be financially literate. And it's if you check out the resource, it's nextlevelincome.com/kids. But that's an example of talking to a group that really, it's not something that I went out to say, hey, let me go find a bunch of children investors or young parents that are investors. It's hey, how can we help the next generation become financially literate and really help make a difference? And I believe if you give, then that will come back. First off, I love the fact that Tom has the resources on the front end. So your book, I remember getting a copy of the book and walking through that and just learning about the philosophy, which I think is great. My personal valet or assistant, Cindy, has been amazing. I'm busy, so I'm not always taking a bunch of time. So she knows, she makes sure she lines everything up for me. I get reminders. The other thing that I really enjoy is you guys have your dashboard online, so I can go and I can look before I go on a podcast, because sometimes I'll sit down. So this is my home office, Tiffany. So I have our office on the top floor of our home, and I'll walk in here and maybe one of my kids grabs me, or my wife says, hey, can you do this? Or we stop in a conversation, and I'll sit down at my desk and I'll say, oh shoot, I didn't get a chance to do as much research as I wanted to do before this podcast. And I love that I can go on, I can see a briefing sheet, I can see what type of audience that I'm going to be speaking to. That's very helpful. So I can kind of think about, okay, who am I going to be speaking to today, because I'm not seeing them online. And then the other thing is, when I speak with your team and I explain to them what my goals are, you all may bring me audiences that I didn't really think about to be on, which is also something that I think, again, it helps increase the range of the message, and again, probably comes back and increases my business as well in the back end. Right away, what I found was, going onto a podcast and talking to people, you have credibility with that host's audience. So, one thing is you get credibility with that audience. So, we use what you would call lead magnet with our book, right? So, I offer my book for free, and it's very easy for me to track how many people I've attracted. It's tough to say those two words back to back. So it's easy to see, okay, who got my book when I was on that podcast? So I can really see, who does my message resonate with? So that's very positive. And those are usually high quality leads. Somebody that hears me, hears my voice, reads my book, and then might even listen to my own podcast. So I've seen a big uptick in terms of books going out, as well as listeners on our podcast. But then the other thing that I didn't really think about, Tiffany, is that podcasting, guesting, and also having your own podcast, it's kind of like, its own club, right? Like a fraternity. It's a network. So you end up networking with these individuals. And, I've gotten clients from going on podcasts. I've hired people from going on podcasts. I've also hired people and had guests from Interview Valet, which is one of the benefits that I see. Is I know I get a lot of people that ask to be on our podcast, because we're definitely top 5%. I'm not sure where we are now in the total rankings. But we get a lot of requests for people to come on our podcast right now. And I turn most of them down because I just don't have the ability to take them all. But if I see one come across from Interview Valet, I know they're vetted, and I take the time to read through it and see. And what's nice is I usually get 2 or 3 options where I can look through and say, not just one guest, which is really nice. And again, I know that the homework has been done on them, and I also know the format that's going to be shared with me in. Yeah, I would say if you haven't considered it, like I didn't even think it was an option out there, it's probably the number one value of time, the number one thing that I can do with respect to the value of my time when I go and speak. Because where else can you spend, say, 30 minutes and speak to multiple people that you would never have the opportunity to speak to again? And oh, by the way, if I'm on a podcast, they're probably going to send me the episode of the podcast that I can share on my social media, maybe some additional collateral graphics. That's what we do for our podcast guests that I can share as well. So if I go on one podcast and spend 30 minutes and hours about them, it's very rare that I spend more than, say, 45 minutes, Tiffany. But I'm probably going to get content for multiple days that I can share. So not only am I getting that one-time hit, but I also have the opportunity to put that on my podcast, on my webpage, out on social media, and share it with people that already see me. And it's kind of like being a little bit of a celebrity when people see that, right? They're like, oh, they're on another podcast, or it gives you credibility, even with people that you already know.